Well, you send my life whirling, darling, when you're twirling on the floor. And who cares about tomorrow? What more is tomorrow than another day? When you swept me away. Yeah, you swept me away. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Closet Recording Studio. I'm Andrew, and this episode is about the poetry and the singing of the Avett Brothers song "Swept Away." This is the sentimental version, I guess, in parentheses at the end, from their album Mignonette. Which is one of my favorite records in the world. So, this is a sweet love song, sort of, kind of, but there is a little darker side here to it too. So, it is a sweet love song in kind of the sense that, one of my best friends and bandmates from many years ago had this played at their wedding, and it was a beautiful moment there too. But so you can read it in a sentimental way, so to speak, but also you can give it imbue it with a little extra meaning too. So let's get into that. We'll talk a little bit about the poetry in it, a little bit about the actual the way it's put together too, not just what it's about, because what it's about seems fairly straightforward. So we'll start the first verse. In poetry, we would call that a stanza, obviously, but we'll start in the first verse. Well, you send my life a whirling, darling, when you're twirling on the floor. So it's addressing a person that the narrator is watching, or maybe with out on the floor. We find that out maybe later in the poem song. But so it's somebody who's dancing, right? And who cares about tomorrow? This is an interesting thought there. Who cares about tomorrow? What more is tomorrow than another day? It feels kind of like even like a wedding, or some like big celebration where the dancing is happening and you're not really thinking about tomorrow. I mean, you can think of it like prom-ish. You can think of it like any big like celebratory dance that usually only happens once. So, and then when you swept me away too, I love the focus here, because one of the cool parts about this song is that I'm assuming the narrator is a man. I mean, it is spoken in a man's voice. The song is sung by two brothers. So we assume that the darlin', generally in kind of country folky music, darlin', is not usually used to refer to a man. Usually it's used to refer to a woman, especially when the singer is a man. So the interesting inverse here, switch up, is this: when you swept me away. Usually in like romantic dance songs and ballads and the history of music all the way back through Disney movies and Cinderellas and At the Ball and all that kind of stuff. Usually it's the man doing the sweeping away and the woman being swept, right? But in this song, we have the man is the one being swept away. And we don't get the impression, because it doesn't say the narrator anyway, is twirling here in this first stanza, right? It says when you're twirling on the floor. So that gives me the impression that the narrator is watching this person dancing. We assume without inhibition, and is like mesmerized by this person. But then you have the second part of that stanza too. Who cares about tomorrow? What more is tomorrow than another day? That's an interesting juxtaposition. Put two thoughts together, right? Who cares about tomorrow? When you think of that, I think of that thought by itself. Usually, who cares about tomorrow is like, let's focus on tonight. And there's hundreds of songs that do that, like Save Tonight, like Tonight We Are Young, Tonight Tonight by the Smashing Pumpkins. Lots of these songs talk about like, let's just seize this moment tonight and not worry about tomorrow. But then he says, what more is tomorrow than another day? Which is kind of, it feels sort of contradictory a little bit. And I love also after he says, when you swept me away the first time, the next part is la 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 la, and that I love how that works, because that functions kind of like his brain, sort of, when he is being swept away, right? Like when we fall in love for the first time, or fall in love, maybe not for the first time in our lives, but for the first time with another person, with that particular person, it tends to be like your brain goes blank for a while and you can't really formulate words. So that kind of, whereas they may have put the la 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 la's in there just because they couldn't think of anything else to put there right there. But I dig it because I think it shows the blankness of the brain. It's like da 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 da. I can't even make words right now. And then we get into like a metaphor here at this verse right here. I see the end of a rainbow. It's an image too, right? See the end of a rainbow. And what's supposed to be at the end of a rainbow, right? Pot of gold. So I guess we're assuming that the woman, the person that he's watching, the one who is doing the sweeping away, is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But then this is where it starts taking a little bit of a turn, right? But what more is a rainbow than colors out of reach? Like, it's interesting because, I mean, it's cute a little bit to think of the person as being like the prize or a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It's kind of a beautiful, colorful image. But then he also says, what more is a rainbow than colors out of reach? So that kind of implies that this person is in some way not available, right? Or at the very least is not available beyond tonight. Because rainbows are beautiful, obviously, and they happen as, the sunlight shining through the end of the rain or whatever, which is a cool metaphor for this kind of relationship too. But they're also very temporary. They have a very short shelf life too. Then he says, if you come down to my window and I climb out my window, then we'll get out of reach. That's some kind of a little kid thing, right? My reading of it to start with, for the beginning of it's always that these are adults that are like, seeing each other across a crowded room for the first time, like Cinderella at the ball, kind of. But this, if you come down to my window and I climb out my window, then we'll get out of reach. That is certainly implying that he's escaping from something, right? Like there's something. Is it another relationship? Is it, is he living in his parents' house still, or whatever? Like there's something, like if you're sneaking out of your room in the middle of the night, which is what that implies, certainly, then there's something that you're escaping from, or there's somebody you don't want to find out, right? So that really imbues then you swept me away. When he sings that part again, it gives a different tone to that, because you swept me away. Because this is not swept me away romantically necessarily this time, right? This is swept me away, like pulled me out of this situation, right? You have removed me from this place that I didn't want to be, and I want to be out here with you instead. So it changes, and good poets do that. When they repeat stuff in poems, it generally is for the effect, one, to show what's important, but also most poets will change the meaning a little bit between the times they repeat it. So keep an eye out for that as we go through this. And then you said with such honest feeling, but what'd you really mean when you said that I'm your man? So she, the other person, has said, you're my man, like said to the narrator, you're my man, right? Like, so the narrator is a man, for sure now. Or the person that's doing the sweeping away is very confused, one or the other. And you said it with such honest feeling, but what'd you really mean when you said that I'm your man? Like, so this is a trust thing, right? Like, I hear you saying that I'm yours, but there's a reason, anyway, that I don't trust that. And not like, I don't get the impression that they think that the person's being mean about it, like lying about it, but there's a reason. And the reason probably has something to do with the reason they're sneaking out of their house in the middle of the night, right? Well, how, my darling, can it be when you have never seen me and you never will again? That's an interesting, I don't know. I've gone over that several dozen times in the times I've listened to the song, and I don't know that I necessarily understand it all the way. The how, my darling, can it be refers to the previous line. Like, how can it be that I'm your man when you have never seen me and you never will again? So this maybe implies that they've not met, that he's just standing at a dance watching her. I don't know. That wouldn't be the case if she has said that he's her man. Like, I don't know exactly how that would work. Maybe they had like a phone relationship or a long distance relationship and they never saw each other in person or something. I don't know. But when you have never seen me and you never will again, and that's not like dark, depressing thought, but that is like, it is paying attention to the idea that this relationship is like a rainbow, right? It's beautiful, but it's also finite. It is over probably after tonight, right? And because you never will see me again. Anyway, so, and then you swept me away again. Then you have, well, life is ever changing, but I can always find a constant and comfort in your love. So life is ever changing, but I can always find a constant and comfort in your love, which is a bizarre thing to follow all of this, right? All of these metaphors and all this language implies that this is like a short-term, finite, contained in this one night thing. And he says, well, life is ever changing, but I can always find a constant and comfort in your love. And with your heart, my soul is bound. And as we dance, so he's out on the floor now. And as we dance, I surely know that some kind of heaven will be found. So this is different here, right? As we dance here, which is different from when you're twirling on the floor. As we dance. So he has like gone out and joined her on the floor at this point, which is maybe why the song has changed. Because life is ever changing, right? I mean, I guess it works that way too. It's a pretty big jump, though, to go to find a constant and comfort in your love, and with your heart my soul is bound. That's like some, and then they lived happily ever after stuff, right? That's a serious. This is not a I just met you kind of language. And as we dance, I surely know that some kind of heaven will be found, right? That's a beautiful sentiment. So our life together will be heavenly. That's obviously a metaphor too. So it's interesting. And then he repeats this verse that is almost, is it exactly the same? It's almost, it says girl there, but it's almost exactly the same as the first verse. So the song is, or the poem is coming full circle, right? You send my life a-whirling, darling, when you're twirling on the floor. And who cares about tomorrow? Oh, girl, what more is tomorrow than another day, right? So you have that. It's interesting because at the beginning I read, well, you send my life a-whirling, as like, wow, I'm seeing you for the first time. My brain is not working very well, and it's amazing. And this is like the butterfly. You call them butterflies, I guess. Like the romantic feelings are bubbling up in my chest. But after we hear all this other stuff, I read "You Send My Life a-Whirling" a little bit differently. Like you're spinning my life out of control, and the person that's narrating this doesn't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but there is definitely like some upheaval implied in there too when you're twirling on the floor. And that makes me read that line too. Who cares about tomorrow? What more is tomorrow than another day? When it puts girl in there too, it's almost like he's trying to talk her into something. Who cares about tomorrow? And what more is tomorrow than another day? That's like the To His Coy Mistress, that poem, Andrew Marvell, from like the 1600s or whatever, where there's a guy trying to get another chaste woman to sleep with him. Like it feels that kind of way by the end. And it changes how I read "When You Swept Me Away" at the end too. It's sweet, but it's also a little bit, I love you because you're into me and I'm into you, and we're going to have this thing tonight, right? And it also changes how I read. I kind of find a constant and comfort in your love. That's like, it reads almost like he's feeding her a line now, instead of being genuine about it. And and when you're in those situations, like lots of times you feel like the emotion is genuine, even if in retrospect you might have been feeding them a line. I don't know. It's a beautiful, beautiful song though, and hope you enjoyed the analysis. I hope if you ever have to write a paper on something like this, or do some kind of analysis or whatever, that this helps, or that you can use these lessons to apply to other things that you have to work on too, or otherwise you found that was just enjoyable anyway. La 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 la. Well, I see the end of the rainbow. What more is a rainbow than colors out of reach? If you come down to my window and I climb out my window, and we'll get out of reach, and then you swept me away. Yeah, you swept